I started my self-improvement animation channel last year while working as a consultant in the financial industry, and now I'm working 100% as a creator. I documented every self-improvement lesson along the way, and this video contains my best videos given in a structured order so that you can ultimately outperform in every area of your life. This is a long video for an animation video, and it's going to take some time to go through it, but if you do, you'll learn the most important lessons I have to offer you. I picked them with specific intentions in mind, so I hope you enjoy them, and I look forward to seeing you in the next clip. Before diving in, I just want to quickly mention my free 5-day email course. If you enjoy my videos and want to finally start executing on the things you said you were going to do, and do so effectively and consistently, click the link below to get it totally for free. Now let's get back to the video. Many people want to become great at many things in life, but most of the time, they just end up becoming average. To massively level up in an area, not just staying stuck at where you're at, you have to have laser focus on that area, and you have to do it for a long enough time. The question that arises then is, what things are you going to choose and how do you choose them? In this video, I'm going to talk about how one can go about choosing what to focus on in life. Rarely are people going to become great at things by default or luck. Most people are just letting society and other people dictate where their life are going. Suddenly, 5, 10, or 20 years have passed, and you're sitting there with regret over not having worked on the things you knew you should have worked on. You have to take ownership of your life and will your dream life into existence. Some people have a goal and destination in mind. Some have even written them down. And that is a great first step, but it is not enough. How are you going to find a flight ticket if you don't even know where you're starting from? It sounds very obvious with this flight analogy, but most people are either ignoring their starting point or heavily underestimating how important it is to identify and analyze their starting point. In other words, their life situation right now. So let's move on to how to exactly do this. You want to divide your life into a few main areas. Let's say these areas are work, health, relationships with family and close friends, relationships romantically, and lastly, spirituality. Now you can change these areas if you have different values or priorities, or you can make them even more specific, but let's work with these for now. What you want to do is look at these areas almost like stats for your life, and you can identify your starting point by scoring each of these areas from 1 to 10. After doing that, you can start to look at your biggest goals or dream life. Your dream life is also divided into these main areas, and you want to score them here too. And how you do that is to identify what score they need to have for you to be living your dream life. After identifying your dream life and your starting points, now we can start to look at what areas we should focus on. There are a few things you want to take into consideration when deciding what to focus on. The first thing is to look at the area with the biggest gap between your starting point and your dream life. There's only 1 point difference between the starting point and your dream life for 4 main areas, but one area has a 5-point difference. It will probably be much wiser to focus on the area with the biggest point difference. The second thing to consider is the life phase that you're in. And by life phase, I mean if you're just starting college or university, if you're about to finish your degree, if you just started working, or if you've been working for a while. If you just started college, maybe it's more beneficial to focus on your social skills and your social circle. If you're about to finish your degree, it's probably wiser to start focusing on work and business. And if you have worked for a while, maybe it's more beneficial to move your main focus to relationships with your family and close friends. These are just examples, but think about your life phase and which one of the main areas it will be more beneficial to focus on in that phase. Another thing you might want to consider is time frame. Let's look back at the example where one of the areas had a 5-point difference between your starting point and your dream life. How long do you think it will take for you to increase that area by 5 points? Will it take longer than the time frame you considered to give it? Will it take longer than the time frame of the life phase that you're in, which was the period that you considered to focus on it? If it is shorter, then great. But if it's longer, that means that you're not going to be able to complete your mission. It means that you might only increase it by 3 points instead of 5. And this means that you either have to continue to focus on it longer than you initially wanted, or you have to put it aside for now and focus on it in a later period of your life. So this was an example of how time frame can affect your decision in what to focus on. After deciding what you want to focus on, now it's all about execution. And since this thing that we want to focus on is a main thing, a big rock, it's probably going to take years. To make sure that I actually achieve this, I set up my life such that basically everything fuels this main thing. My sleep schedule, my social circle, my finances, it's all redirected to this main area. The things that I don't want to sacrifice, like my family, close friends, health, and a few other things, those are areas where I'm going to reduce my effort to the bare minimum to keep them going, or at least to the bare minimum to make them not regress. Everything else is going to be sacrificed, and all the freed up energy that I get from this is going to be fueled into this main area. The last thing that I want to touch upon is complementary areas. It's often very plausible to have focus on a main area, but also another complementary area like health and fitness. But I'm going to give a warning about this. A warning about something I often got trapped in, and something I see a lot of people get trapped in. And that is that when you're thinking in your head that you have two main areas that you're focusing on, it's very easy to get sucked into one of these two areas. And what started off as a complementary area now have become a distraction. To give you a practical example of this, I used to look at working out and doing combat sport as a complementary area. And what quickly happened is that I got sucked into these areas. I started to spend more time watching videos on how to optimize my workouts and diet. I started to look into my techniques in combat sport, watching videos, analyzing. So what started off as a complementary area quickly became a distraction. To prevent me from falling into this trap, I've changed the question that I asked myself. The question that I used to ask myself was, how can I optimize my workout and combat sport in the amount of time that I've given myself? And as we've seen, this question just led me to becoming distracted. So the question I ask myself now is, how can I work out and do combat sport such that I optimize my main thing? It's such a subtle distinction, but it has made a huge difference for me in practice. So there you have it, how one can go about choosing a main area to focus on. Do you think you're good at learning multiple skills at once? Or do you want to learn multiple skills at once? I would advise you to think again. Because what if I told you that trying to juggle learning multiple skills at once is actually slowing you down? Especially in today's fast-paced world, where it's easy to get impatient and rushed into wanting to learn everything at once. In this video, I'm going to share with you why rapid and effective learning isn't about focusing on more, but about focusing on less. Make sure to watch until the end, as I'm going to give you 2 personal examples of how I apply this to my own life. First, let's talk about why we should focus on one skill at a time. On a micro level, we know that research suggests that multitasking is a myth. Your mind can't really focus on multiple things at once. Although it might appear sometimes that you're multitasking, what your mind actually does is that it rapidly switches focus between each task. And we also know that task switching is unproductive. Every task has a startup time. And by multitasking, you actually lose time by having to go through this startup phase every time you switch your focus. There is also momentum involved in doing a task. And by switching tasks too early or too often, you're losing out on this momentum. So this is what happens on a micro level, but it can also be applied on a macro level, the longer term. Let's say you're trying to learn 2 skills at once or 3 skills at once. Now you've divided your focus. Just like there is a startup time on the micro level, there's also a startup time on the macro level. When you're trying to learn a new skill, your mind has to go through this initial phase where it has to refocus and get into the groove of learning that one skill. And if you're trying to learn 3 skills at once, you have to go through this initial phase multiple times. Momentum is also crucial on the macro level. By focusing on one skill for a long enough time, you're going to get into a momentum of learning that skill. And this momentum is going to make you much more effective in learning that skill. If you're trying to learn 3 skills at once, you're going to get into the situation where you might get momentum for learning the first skill, but then you need to switch focus as you're trying to learn another skill, and then you kill the momentum you had for the first skill. And since you want to learn 3 skills at once, you have to switch focus again and kill the momentum you might have gotten from learning your second skill. The worst case scenario is that you might not get into a momentum for any of those 3 skills that you're trying to learn. Now let's move on to how you can implement this concept. You can apply this to basically everything in life, but I think it's easier to understand it from a sport first. So I'm going to give you an example through combat sport and then with the social skill. I train the combat sport Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and it's widely known within the community that you should focus on your defense skills first. But it doesn't stop there. Sure, you have chosen your one skill to focus on, your defense skill, but defense is still too broad. You have to break it down even further. What skill within defense skills are you going to focus on? Let's say that you want to work on a defense from a particular submission. That's good, but you need to break it down even further. What variant of that submission are you going to work on? Coming to this step is really, really good, but you can actually break it down even further if you want. Because that defense from that particular variant of the submission is made up by a lot of movements. So you can actually break it down to a certain movement you want to master first. So you only focus on that particular movement until you've mastered it. And then you move on to all the other moves that make up the defense. Then you move on to the other variants of that submission. After mastering those, you can move on to another submission defense skill, and you can break it down like we did earlier. And you do that again and again. And all those skills combined is what makes up your defense skill. Now, let's move on with my next example of social skills. A normal social skill that people want to work on is becoming more confident. Now, just focusing on becoming more confident in terms of social skills is a bit too broad, just like with defense skills in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. We have to break it down even further. What are the different areas that makes up a confident person? Or what are the skills that makes up a confident person? Well, it is the skill of body language, the skill of holding eye contact, the skill of being able to talk loud. We break it down like that and we choose a particular skill we want to focus on. And let's say we want to focus on the skill of being able to talk loud. Now that is very tangible, and that is one skill that everybody can become better at. You can practice speaking 5% louder in all your conversations from now on. If you speak 5% louder in each conversation every day for 1 month straight, do you not think that you will develop the skill of being able to speak a bit louder? Do you not think that your voice will get a bit stronger? By doing this, people are going to perceive you as a bit more confident, and they are going to treat you like you are a bit more confident. And you experiencing this, you yourself are going to feel a bit more confident, and you're going to continue to speak a bit louder. And this gets reinforced again and again into this positive spiral loop. After reaching a level that you're happy with of speaking louder, you can move on to other skills that a typical confident person has. And you work on those just like you did with working on speaking louder. And before you know it, you've actually become a confident person. Don't for a second think that you can have all the skills that a confident person has without actually being one or becoming one. By practicing and mastering the skills of a confident person, with the words of Epictetus, we are what we repeatedly do. Are you trying to go hard in all areas of your life? Or do you have a main thing you're focusing on, but afraid of losing your edge in other areas? In this video, I'll talk about how you can juggle and balance multiple areas in your life in a smart way. Make sure to watch all the way through, as I'm going to give some harsh truths throughout the video. When you want to massively level up in something, you have to devote almost all your energy into that one thing. That means that energy and focus in other areas of your life has to be reallocated into this one main thing. Before we dive deeper, there is a concept that we need to understand. This is a concept I got from Dr. Mike Israetel, who is a widely respected guy within the fitness community. He has something he calls MV, MEV, and MRV. MV stands for maintenance volume, and it is the minimum volume you need to do to maintain your muscle mass. MEV stands for minimum effective volume, and it's the minimum volume you need to do to effectively increase your muscle mass. And lastly, MRV, which stands for maximum recoverable volume. This is the maximum volume you're able to do to recover. If you go beyond this point, you actually won't recover. You can basically look at it as your limit. Now, there's two more interesting things within this concept that we need to know to apply this in our own life. The first interesting thing is that each body part has their own MRV. Your chest has its own MRV, your legs has its own MRV, your arms has its own MRV, and so on. But your body as a whole also has its own MRV. The interesting thing here is that the MRV for your body as a whole is lower than the sum of MRVs for each of your body part. This means that you can't go 100% on all of your body parts, even though they individually had the capacity for it, because doing so will bring you beyond the MRV for your body as a whole. Most people don't know this, but if you are consistently going beyond your MRV for your body as a whole, you're actually going to lose muscles. Just think about it. To build muscle, you need to recover. As a matter of fact, you're only building muscle when you're recovering. When you're working out, you're just tearing down your muscle. Isn't it ironic how this person can go 100% for all of their body parts, thinking that they're a beast, but in reality, they're making their body worse. Now let's move on to the second interesting thing, and that is about MV and MEV. Let's say that the minimum volume to maintain your chest muscles is 6 sets a week of a certain exercise or combinations of exercises. And the minimum volume you need to do to effectively increase your chest muscles is 10 sets. Now we see that there is an inefficiency zone between MV and MEV. What happens if you train 7, 8, or 9 sets a week? Well, first of all, you're going to maintain your chest muscles as you're above your MV, but you're not going to effectively increase your chest muscles as you're under your MEV. And these extra sets, extra effort, focus, and energy is going to tear down on your MRV tank. If you actually just wanted to maintain your chest muscles, it would have been much better off by reducing the volume to MV such that you have more in your MRV tank to use for other body parts. Let's move on to how we can apply this to our own life. The first common trap is that a lot of people try to go 100% in all areas of their life. Just like how we talked about MRV earlier, if you go 100% in all areas of your life, you're most likely going to go beyond your MRV for your life, body, and mind as a whole. And just like how you're going to lose muscle if you're consistently above your MRV, the same is going to happen to your life. By consistently pushing yourself 100% in all areas of your life, beyond the point where you're able to recover, you're eventually going to burn out, get sick, and hate your life. And this is ultimately going to make you worse in all areas of your life. The second common trap is that most people remain in this inefficiency zone between MV and MEV. If you have a main thing that you want to massively level up in, and you're in the inefficiency zone for, let's say, 3 other areas in your life, these inefficiencies are going to tear down on your MRV tank. And what's left in your MRV tank is ultimately what's left for your main thing. You would have been much better off if you reduced your energy, effort, and focus in all these 3 areas to MV and reallocated that freed up energy to your main thing. Now, your question might be, how would this actually look like in practice? Let's say those 3 other areas are your family, gym, and piano skills. You might find that the minimal effort you need to maintain your family relationships is to meet them 1 time a week. And the minimum effort you need to effectively increase your family relationships is to meet them 3 times a week. The inefficiency zone here is 2 times a week. You're going to maintain your family relationships because you're above your MV, but you're not going to effectively increase it as you're under your MEV. And if you're just going to maintain your family relationship, you would have been much better off to just meet them one time a week, you reallocated that freed time, energy, and effort into your main thing. And this might sound harsh because it is about family relationships, but it is the cold truth. But this also doesn't mean that you're going to do this forever. You're only doing it when you're trying to massively level up in a specific area in your life. And you're only doing it until you've reached a level that you're satisfied with. After that, you can switch your focus to another main thing. And that main thing could be your family relationships. After doing this exercise for your family relationships, you do the same for your gym and piano skills. Finding the MV, MEV, and reallocate even more freed up energy, time, and effort into your main thing. Lastly, and sadly, it is probably not enough to just reduce your energy in all other areas of your life or skills to envy. For some areas or skills, you have to reduce it all the way down to zero. That's right. You have to totally give it up. You only have a certain amount of energy, and when you want to massively improve in one area, you have to sacrifice other areas. Personally, I stopped playing the piano, the guitar, video games, and football, even though they were really fun activities for me. But I also knew that there were certain things I just had to sacrifice. And with that, I will leave you with this quote. If you don't sacrifice for what you want becomes the sacrifice. I received a lot of questions from my earlier video about how to actually find your maintenance level. I've been playing around with this concept for years, so I forgot how unintuitive it can be if you haven't heard of it before. But the answer is much simpler than you think, and that is to just experiment. You can analyze and make your best estimate, but ultimately, you have to experiment. A simple 3-step process for implementing this is to estimate, experiment, and auto-regulate. Estimate refers to analyzing and giving your best guess for how much time and effort is needed to maintain your skill. Experiment refers to actually doing it and testing it. Auto-regulate refers to adjusting your maintenance level based on your results. To auto-regulate, you can also use a 3-step process: add, maintain, or subtract. For example, if you feel like you're not maintaining and losing your skill after your first estimate for the first week or two, add 1 or 2 more sessions and test that out. If you feel like you're maintaining after your first estimate, continue with the same maintenance level. If you feel like you're actually getting better or that you can easily maintain with less effort after your first estimate, subtract by 1 or 2 sessions and test that out. Do this for a while and you will start to get a more precise awareness of where your maintenance level are at. Quality also affects your maintenance level. By quality, I mean how focused or present you are during your practice or activity. 2 focused sessions are often better than 4 distracted ones. For example, 2 guitar sessions concentrating on challenging chords or scales are more effective than 4 guitar sessions where you're just dabbling around unfocused, playing songs you already know. This implies that higher quality practice can reduce the number of sessions needed to maintain your skill. You can try to find the maintenance level for all the skills you want to maintain. It's a fun and interesting exercise and will give you insights into different maintenance levels across different areas. However, realistically, you probably won't have the time and energy to maintain everything you want. Not only can't you progress in everything in life, but you can't even maintain everything in life. Some things have to go, and that's why you need to prioritize. Prioritization is key. Recognize that you can't maintain everything, and that's okay. But also recognize that you're not necessarily sacrificing them for good. You're just putting them aside for a period of time. You can always revisit and reprioritize later. So prioritize and experiment. I recommend starting with fewer priorities to ensure you can maintain them without feeling stressed or overwhelmed. Gradually add in more if you find you have the capacity. If you start with too much, you risk getting overwhelmed and stressed, and worst case scenario, not maintain anything. You might also even find that starting with fewer priorities is too much. If that's the case, you have been faced with the harsh truth about how little time and energy we actually have. Remember, the key is to find a balance that works for you. Prioritize wisely, estimate, experiment, and auto-regulate. Embrace the process and you'll find a sustainable way to maintain your skills. Have you ever tried to juggle multiple interests and skills, but ended up feeling overwhelmed and not making progress in any of them? You're not alone, especially in today's world where everyone seems to show off their skills on social media. I know exactly how it feels. I've juggled a demanding full-time job as a consultant, maintained a social life, played piano, trained in combat sports, hit the gym, and went bouldering. It was overwhelming. but I've discovered effective strategies on exactly how to manage my interests and skills while still making significant progress in each of them without feeling overwhelmed. Stick around, because by the end of this video, you'll have a clear roadmap to manage your interests and skills effectively. Let's first take a look at why having or wanting too many skills is dangerous in the first place. Wanting and keeping up with too many skills is only going to slow you down, or worst case, make you stand still. By wanting too much and keeping up with too much, you're going to spread yourself too thin. You just end up with small, insignificant advances in many areas instead of substantial progress in fewer. I like to look at it like this energy ball. If you have too many skills and interests, your energy gets divided into tiny arrows, each barely making an impact. But if you concentrate on just one, you're going to have a long and powerful arrow, driving significant progress. Now, I don't think this energy ball is a binary concept with only two sides. It is more of a scale. You can focus on two skills and make significant progress, though not as much as with just one. But the further to the left you go, the shorter and less impactful your progress arrows become. And it's going to come to a point where the arrows become too short and insignificant. To give you a practical example of this, I once juggled a demanding full-time job as a consultant, trained a combat sport Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, did strength training, boulderied, attended Toastmasters, and tried to maintain my social life. I was focusing on too much, felt overwhelmed, and ended up not making any significant progress in any of them. In other words, I was too far left on the scale. Now I found a really clever strategy to being able to learn and progress in the skills and interests that you want. A strategy that can be adjusted to anyone's preferences. But before we dive into the strategies, let's talk about prioritization. We all know that we can't do everything. That's why we need to prioritize. Many people avoid prioritizing and hope things will work out on their own, but this only leads to feeling overwhelmed and unclear about your goals. These feelings are going to linger in the back of your mind throughout your day and life and can easily lead to procrastination, as vagueness is a common cause for procrastination. To combat this, you need clarity, and an easy way to gain clarity is to write down your prioritization list. So here's an exercise. Write down 5 to 10 skills and interests that you would like to have and rank them by importance. We'll build on this exercise later. To understand the strategies of how to effectively manage your skills, we first need to understand the concepts of maintaining and building. Maintaining refers to the minimal effort required to maintain your current skill level without improving or decaying. Building refers to the effort required to effectively increase your current skill level. We all know that there is a difference between the time and effort required to effectively progress in a skill or interest versus just maintaining it. What most people overlook is how big this difference can be. For example, maintaining your fitness might mean going to the gym twice a week, whereas effectively building your muscles could require 5 sessions a week. The next exercise is to find your maintenance levels and building levels for all the skills you wrote down on your prioritization list. I made a previous video on how to find your exact levels, which you can check out here later. But for the sake of the video, let's keep moving. Think in terms of sessions per week. Don't overthink it too much. We're just going to give rough estimates, and we can always adjust later. An example of this could be similar to what I just mentioned, that to effectively build your physique, you might need to go to the gym 5 times a week for 45 minutes each, while 2 times a week for 45 minutes each might be enough to maintain your physique. Another example is with piano. You might need 3 one-hour sessions a week to effectively progress, while 20 minutes every other day could be enough to maintain it. Again, don't overthink it. It's just a rough estimate, and we can always adjust later. Finally, we can start to talk about strategies. Let's look back at our scale. On the far right, we had one long arrow for a single focus, and on the left, we had many short, insignificant arrows. I personally prefer to be as far right on the scale as possible. The strategy that suits this style is to keep all skills and interests at maintenance levels while using all the freed up energy on one skill that you want to massively level up in. Now, this is just my style, but it's also what I've seen actually works the best for other people too. With that said, it's definitely plausible to have a strategy more suited towards the middle of the scale. This strategy will focus on not just one skill, but a few. Let's use 5 as an example. So you can choose the top 5 from your prioritization list. While you won't have a long line for all 5, you would still have a significant long line for all of them. This is where understanding your maintenance and building levels is crucial. To actually focus on 5 skills and interests, you have to have the energy to keep up with the sum of the 5 building levels you identified for the 5 skills. How do you know if you have the energy? You put them in the calendar and test it. You already estimated the building levels for your 5 skills. Now you want to schedule them in your calendar. You might find that there is enough space in your calendar to perfectly fit all the building levels for all your 5 skills. You might even find that you have more room in your calendar. In that case, you can consider adding 1 more skill from your prioritization list. More realistically though, you might find that you don't have room for all your 5 skills and that you actually have to cut one out. At this point, we're only given first rough estimates for the building levels for our skills, and we have scheduled them in the calendar. We don't actually know anything for sure until we test it out in the real world. Only after testing it out for 1 or 2 weeks, you can start adjusting. Maybe you had a too high estimation for the building level for one skill and too low for another. Maybe you find that you had the right estimation for all your skills and had the time in your calendar, but actually didn't have the energy. This is something you have to continuously test and adjust each week. And if you want to dive deeper on exactly how to do this, I'll link the previous video here again.
Have you ever set ambitious goals only to find yourself giving up when things get tough, or feeling like you're just banging your head against the wall? In this video, I'm going to reveal a timeless and proven method inspired by legendary Ray Dalio. This approach will not just change how you set goals, but it will fundamentally transform your entire relationship with goal setting. Make sure to watch until the end, as I'm going to share some tips that most people overlook when setting goals. Hey guys, if you're new here, this is Outperform, and this channel breaks down self-development concepts through unique visualizations and insights that are often overlooked when actually implementing these concepts. So if you like this video, make sure to hit the subscribe button. Ray Dalio's 5-step process looks like this. Set a goal, encounter and identify the problems to your goals, and don't tolerate it. Identify the root cause to your problems. Design a game plan to solve your problems. And last but not least, execute. Now let's look at each step in greater detail. The first step is about setting clear goals. Personally, I like to set 2-year goals, but it really depends on you and your goals. And after I set my goals, I kind of almost forget about it, and I will start to focus on the process and the actions that will lead me to my goals. But I will come back to that in step 4 when we start to design the game plan. The second step is about identifying and encountering the problems. It may be hard in the beginning, but each problem is an opportunity for you to rise and improve. Look at each problem as a necessary step you need to take to come closer to your goals. After you have identified the problems, you can't tolerate it, because tolerating the problem will yield the same result as if you did not identify the problems in the first place. The third step is about identifying the root cause. This is probably the most overlooked step in the goal setting process, because after identifying the problems in step 2, most people will just jump straight to step 4 and try to find solutions for the problems. But this is a mistake. You have to take time to identify the root cause. Most people also actually don't identify the root cause, but they identify a symptom. And the difference between a symptom and a root cause is that a symptom is usually an action or inaction that led to your problems, while a root cause is usually a character trait. So a symptom could be that you are not eating enough healthy food, but the root cause may be that you're actually not a disciplined person. So you see here that symptom is more about what you do, a verb, while a root cause is more about who you are, an adjective about yourself. And this is also why you see a lot of people actually change when they achieve a goal, because they actually had to become a new person to obtain that goal. The next step is about designing a game plan. And for this step, I like to reverse engineer my goals. And by this, I mean that I like to look at my end goal and work backwards from there. Let's say I have a 2-year goal, and that 2-year goal is divided into 5 big phases. I will then identify the 4th phase and what goals I need to reach in this phase to be 1 step away from my end goal. Then I will start to identify the 3rd phase and what goals I need to reach in this phase to be 1 step away from the 4th phase. I will work backwards like that all the way until today. That way I know that my daily tasks are connected to my end goal and that each task I complete will bring me 1 step closer to my end goal. After this, I like to ask myself certain questions to make me think outside the box. And these questions are: if I had to double, triple, or even quadruple my goals, what would I do? What are the possible challenges to my goal, and how would I prevent those? What would I put in place such that I will be surprised if I didn't manage to follow through with my goals? What would I do to make it impossible for me to fail? The last step in the goal setting process is execution. You set your goal, you identify the problems and the root causes to those problems, and you designed a game plan. But none of them matters if you don't execute. So work on your prioritized task list one at a time and get after it. Now, let's move on to essential tips for the process. First of all, you need to do all 5 in sequential order. We touched upon this earlier, that most people would jump straight to solutions and deciding a game plan for their goals. But this is a mistake. You need to do them in sequential order, and you need to do them thoroughly. Each step gives you more information that may lead you to modify the next step. And when you complete one cycle of the goal setting process, you start again with more information. Second, you need to do all 5 steps well to succeed. But no one is really good at all the steps, because each step requires a different skill set. To give you a personal example of this, I know I'm pretty good at setting goals, identifying problems, and designing a plan. But I'm more mediocre at not tolerating the problem and executing. To solve this problem, I can work with somebody that is really good at execution. That way, he will lift me up to his standards of execution. And at the same time, he will benefit from my goal setting and design skills. It's a win-win situation where we both make up for our weaknesses. Another way for me to solve this issue is to hire a coach. A good coach will increase my execution skills because he will make me accountable for my actions.
Every goal consists of 3 parts, but most people only focus on the first part, the outcome goal. Most people forget the true hidden goals behind the outcome goal, which is the traits goal and the process goal. While the outcome goal is important for setting the direction and the difficulty of the journey, to actually achieve it relies on shifting your focus to the traits and process goals. So what exactly is the traits and process goals? The traits goal is who is the type of person that can achieve your outcome goal. The process goal is what is the process behind achieving your outcome goal. And you can take it even further. Who is the type of person that can effortlessly achieve your outcome goal? What is the process that, if implemented, will make it unreasonable for you to not achieve your outcome goal? If you just aim to become the type of person that can effortlessly achieve your goal and aim to enjoy the process to reach your goal, then the outcome goal will naturally be achieved as a byproduct. You don't even need to think about it. What's even better is that you're gonna get a synergistic effect by working on the traits goal and the process goal. The more you develop the traits of the type of person that can effortlessly achieve the outcome goal, the easier it's going to get to execute the process, because that's just who you are or who you want to eventually become. And the more you execute the process, the stronger you're going to identify with the traits of that type of person. This creates a virtuous cycle. So set your outcome goal, but remember, the real magic happens when you set the traits and process goals and shift your focus to achieving those. Forget about New Year resolution. We all know that when February comes around, most people have already forgotten about their goals. Luckily, there is a much better alternative to New Year resolution, a strategy that has and enhances all the benefits of a New Year resolution, while simultaneously making it impossible for you to fall into the typical February slump. And this game-changing strategy is the 3-month resolutions or quarterly resolutions. In this video, I'll talk about how just a small shift from New Year resolutions to quarterly resolutions will transform your life. There are nuggets all throughout the video, so make sure to watch until the end. The first reason to why quarterly resolutions is superior is because of urgency. People do better closer to a deadline. We have all experienced it with ourselves that when a deadline is around the corner, we turn on the gas. And it happens for companies too. For many firms, December is often the best month of the year, and the last 3 months often represents 30 to 40% of their annual sales. 3 months is short enough for you to feel the urgency from day one and all the way through, but it's also long enough for you to get big projects done. Every day matters now. You have to make them count. You don't have the luxury anymore to put things off. Quarterly resolutions forces you to cut through the noise. Not only do you not have the luxury to put things off, but you also don't have the luxury to spend time on unimportant tasks or tasks that is not going to move the needle. It forces you to prioritize and focus on the most leveraged task. Some of you might see how Parkinson's law gets into the picture here. Work expands so as to fill the time available for its completion. And let's be honest here, most people's 1-year goal can be achieved in 3 months of focused work. And this process forces you to confront that reality. The second reason why quarterly resolutions is better is that it makes it easier and clearer to see the end of the tunnel, which helps with keeping up your motivation. A full year is too far away and makes it hard to see the end of the tunnel. And this again can make things feel abstract and overwhelming. The third reason to why you want to have quarterly resolutions is faster feedback loops. With 1-year goals, you'll only get your main summarized data points after 1 whole year. Only after that can you really reflect on it and iterate for next year. For 3-month goals, you'll get the chance to do this 4 times during a year. And we know that the game of getting better is a game of feedback loops and iterations. Combine that with doing small weekly reflections and iterations along the way, and you will enhance the effect even more. So we just saw how quarterly resolutions basically quadrupled the benefits of feedback loops. This quadrupling effect is also true for the other benefits. You're going to 4x the urgency effect because it's going to affect your first quarter resolution, your second quarter resolution, your third and your fourth quarter resolution. And the same is going to apply for the motivation effect through being able to see the end of the tunnel easier and clearer for all the quarterly resolutions. What this strategy basically do is cramping 1 year into 3 months, 1 month into 1 week, and 1 week into 1 day, which ultimately is going to 4x your focus and results. Now let's take a look at an example through fitness. And let's look at the New Year resolutions first. A normal goal a lot of people have is to build muscle and burn fat. And they might even be specific by saying that they want to go up X amount in muscle mass and go down Y percentage in body fat. And 12 months from now, they're going to weigh this amount of weight. While being specific is good, 12-month goals is so far away. How do you know how much you're going to weigh 12 months from now? And so many things can happen in between. Vacations are going to come up, sudden projects from your work can come up that may affect your fitness goals, some social gatherings or activities can come up, or family-related things can come up. You might even change your mind during the year. 12 months is so far away, and there are so many things that can happen during the year that is going to prevent you from reaching your goal. Compare that to a 3-month goal. With only 3 months, you know that it's probably better to just focus on building mass or just losing weight. Let's say that you decide to build muscle for the quarterly resolution, and your goal might be to gain 0.25% to 0.5% of body weight on average each week by eating a surplus of 250 to 500 calories on average each day. And you're also going to train 4 times a week. Similarly to the 12-month goal, this is also very specific. But in addition to that, this resolution is only for 3 months. It's so much easier to see the end of the tunnel. You know that you're going to have a reasonable good estimate for your body weight after only 3 months, and things doesn't feel so abstract. And the chance of unforeseen plans coming up the next 3 months is much lower. And even if it comes up, you're probably going to handle it better for a 3-month resolution than a 12-month resolution. After going through the 3-month period, you get the chance to reflect and iterate much earlier than if you had a 1-year goal. Did you gain too fast or too slow? Do you want to mass the next 3 months? Or do you want to cut? Or maybe you just want to maintain your fitness for the next quarterly resolution and focus on other things. These are reflections and decisions that you wouldn't have the chance to do so early for a 1-year goal. But for quarterly goals, you get the chance to do this 4 times a year. Now this was just an example with fitness, but I hope you can see how this can be applied to basically any other areas in your life. Your business, your work, studies, and social skills, just to mention a few.
Don't waste the experiences you've had in learning new things. Reflect on these experiences in regards to how you learned and progress. Because if you master the skill of learning and progression, you can master anything. In this video, I'm going to talk about a general framework for continuous learning. And in the end, I'm going to talk about how you can massively speed up this process. The general framework for continuous learning is theory, action, and reflection. You read up theory and general concepts of the skill that you want to learn, you take action, you reflect on that action and the feedback that you got from it, and then you repeat the process. In the beginning phases of learning a new skill, I would ignore the theory part, or at least significantly reduce my focus on it. Because this is where most people get trapped. Most people get stuck on the theory part and never start. It is not uncommon for people to waste years reading up on theory before they even take their first action. And I have been a victim of that myself. Theory is potential knowledge, but it is wasted knowledge if you don't take action on it. In addition, you can't read up on theory on how you specifically, with your unique physical and psychological traits, are going to respond when trying to implement certain theories. That knowledge is only unlocked through action. Of course, people have different preferences for their action to theory ratio. Some people prefer more theory and more quality actions, while other people prefer to learn through more actions. But it is really hard to know this in the beginning, and I think it is a trap to start thinking about it in the beginning. It's probably much better to go hard on action and reflection in the beginning, and later down the journey, you can start to adjust your action to theory ratio. The two main ways to speed up the progress for continuous learning is through hanging out with like-minded people and through coaching. Like-minded people are going to make it a lot more fun in the action phase, and they're going to push you. They're going to make the reflection phase better because you can reflect with each other and they can give you their own perspective on how you did things. And lastly, the theory phase is also going to get better because you can discuss theories together and you can filter out bad theory. A good coach will give you similar effects. A good coach has already walked the path that you're trying to walk. He will push you in the action phase and he will make you reflect on the right things. And he will give you the theory that you need instead of making you waste time on theories that are not relevant for you and your specific situation. So start taking action. Don't get stuck in theory. Take action and reflect. Speed up the process, either getting a coach or hang out with like-minded people, or both. Repeat the process, and I'm confident that you will master the skill of your choice. We all want to win. We all want to get the feeling of beating an opponent, the feeling of getting ahead, the feeling of winning. But in this video, I'm gonna talk about my perspective on how focusing on winning most of the time actually is not optimal for winning. And in the end of the video, I'm gonna talk about the few times it's reasonable to focus on winning. First of all, everybody wants to win. Every athlete, every team, in every competition, all of them wants to win. So it can't be the main factor that differentiates winners from losers. And James Clear talked about this too. He had this great question. If you were a basketball coach and you ignored your goal to win a championship and focused only on what your team does at practice each day, would you still get results? I think you would, he said, and I agree. If you played sports, you probably heard the saying, the results will take care of itself. And the 3-time Super Bowl winner, Bill Walsh, said something similar. The score takes care of itself. It takes care of itself. In other words, focusing on winning doesn't matter because it will take care of itself. Focusing on winning is not included in the equation. Only thing that matters is that you focus on taking the action that will get you the results. Winning is for short term and learning is for long term. To give you an example of this, we'll talk about my experience with Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, which is a fight sport. This concept can be applied to all other areas.
The guy that focuses on winning is probably gonna win more, but that's only in the short term. To learn something new, to learn a new technique, you will have to first put yourself in situations where you're able to apply that technique, where you're able to learn that technique. And by doing this, you're risking putting yourself in situations where you will lose and you will fail. And if you're the guy that focuses on winning, you're not going to want to do this. So you're not going to be able to learn new things and new techniques. Second of all, the guy that focuses on winning is going to rely more on his strength than his technique. A lot of the times in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you're going to be put in situations where you can either use more strength to submit someone or you can use better technique. And if you're new, using more strength probably going to be a higher percentage for you to finish or submit your opponent. And because your focus is on winning, you're going to use strength. But what you don't realize is that in the long term, the guy that focused on better technique, his submission rate is going to be way higher than yours because he has better technique and he hasn't even applied his full strength yet. Another concept that comes in when we talk about focusing on winning versus focusing on learning is the concept of external reward versus internal reward. As I've said earlier, the guy that focused on winning is probably gonna win more in the short term. In other words, he's gonna get more external rewards, and he's going to think back to how he got this reward. He got this reward by not putting himself in situations where he could lose. And he got this reward by applying more strength than technique. So he's going to continue to do those actions by winning and by getting external reward. Ironically, he's going to reinforce bad actions and ultimately bad habits. To become the guy that focuses more on learning, you have to realize that if you manage to put yourself in situations where you were able to apply new techniques and learn, you actually won, even though you might have lost that round. Even though externally it didn't look like you gained something, you have to realize that you've won. You have to internally reward yourself. Lastly, let's talk about when I think it's reasonable to actually focus on winning. First, I think it's very reasonable to do it now and then just to feel what it's like. Feel what it is like to use 100% your strength and speed. Feel what it is like to let your subconscious take care of your techniques while your conscious is 100% focused on winning. The second time I think it's reasonable to focus on winning is in important competition. Note that I'm saying important competition and not all competition. And to give you an example of this, I participated in a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu competition and my focus at that time was on winning. As a consequence of that, I went down a weight class and I won. But looking back at it now, I would have changed my focus to learning. By focusing on learning, I wouldn't have gone down a weight class. I would have competed at a heavier and more competitive weight class, even though my chance of winning would have gone down. The reason I would have changed my focus to learning is because of that competition was really not that important. And my future competitions are going to be more important. And I would argue that the experience that I would have gotten from competing in a heavier, more competitive weight class would have been of a lot more value than competing at an easier weight class, even though I've won.
Most of us want to win, succeed, and look good in front of others. We often don't want to embarrassingly fail and look stupid in front of others, leading us to not taking risks. But there is a huge problem with this. Risking failure is a necessary step to winning and success, and fear of failure will either massively slow down your progress or prevent you from progressing at all. Therefore, in this video, I will dive deeper into the concept of failing fast and failing forward, how to use it, and ultimately stop letting fear of failure kill your progress. People are so addicted to looking good and winning in front of others, they don't want to look bad. This mindset prevents them from experimenting with actions that increases the chance of failure. The problem is that to level up in something, you have to learn new things.
And learning new things means that you're going to be at a beginner level at that specific thing, and you're going to fail. And that's totally okay. You're supposed to fail at the beginning. There is no way around this. The only way to level up is to learn new things. And the only way to learn new things is to risk failure while you're taking action and risk looking stupid in front of others. This might hurt your ego, but if you understand what I'm talking about, it really doesn't matter. Why does it matter if you fail or look stupid in front of others if you know that you will learn from it? It might look like you're losing from the outside, but from the inside, you know you're winning. And over the long term, you will start to win on the outside too, because that is when you get to enjoy the fruits of your learning and failures. I train the combat sport Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and one of our trainers has a saying that really encompasses this concept. The saying is as follows: if you don't get submitted in training, you're playing it too safe. If you're not getting submitted during training, you're most likely not trying to learn any new moves, playing it too safe, or have an ego about losing. But the whole point of training is experimenting and learning new things. This is such an incredible mindset shift, especially if you have an ego about losing. If you adopt this mindset, you're gonna go from avoiding and fearing failure to almost wanting and seeking failure. This will pave the way for you to freely experiment and learn new things, ultimately allowing you to level up faster. Another reframe that I also want to add is to compare the fear of failure with the fear of not leveling up. You should be more afraid of not leveling up than of failure. Be more afraid of not progressing, remaining stagnant, and staying stuck than looking bad in front of others. Remember that the next time you feel the fear of failing arising. Knowing that failure equals leveling up, you want to fail fast and fail forward. Keep in mind that fear of failure isn't binary. It's not that you either are afraid of failure or not afraid of failure. Instead, it's more of a spectrum. On one side, you have people that are extremely afraid of failure, and on the other side, you have people that is not afraid of failure at all. They almost love it. And you also have people that are in between. If you were previously extremely afraid of failure, but start to realize this concept, you're not going to immediately go to the far right of this spectrum. You're probably going to go a bit more to the right. The difference between the people on the far right and the people in the middle is that the people on the far right doesn't let fear of failure stop them for a second. They take the actions they need to take seamlessly, without hesitating, and they move fast. The people in the middle also don't let fear of failure prevent them from taking the actions necessary, but they move a lot slower. Although they do ultimately take the actions necessary, they hesitate. They might hesitate before they take the actions, and they might hesitate during the actions. This is because they haven't fully mastered how to handle their fear of failure. But the more they work on this, the better they're going to get. Think about where you are in this spectrum. Are you totally paralyzed by the fear of failure? Or are you able to act despite the fear of failure, but it's still slowing you down and making you hesitate? This is a continuous process, and it's going to be especially challenging for those that have a huge ego of wanting to look good in front of others and not wanting to look like a loser. You have to fight your way to the right of the scale, constantly hurting and breaking down your ego. Because the more to the right you are on the scale, the faster you will progress. There comes to a point where we're far enough to the right on the scale that failing fast and failing forward is no longer that productive. The whole point in the first place is to learn and progress. But since fear of failure either stopped or slowed down our progress, we had to use the concept of fail fast and fail forward to crush it. When fear of failure is no longer a problem, you can change the saying from fail fast and fail forward to iterate fast and iterate forward. To deliberately fail is most likely not the fastest way to progress, but you had to do it in the beginning to counteract the negative effect of fear of failure. Now that it isn't a problem anymore, you're just focused on taking the actions that will give you the most learning and fastest progress. And if you must fail, you do so without hesitating, but you're not deliberately failing.
Have you ever thought about where you would be if you've only pushed yourself 1% harder 1 year ago? In this video, I'm going to show you actual graphs of how much progress you can make by pushing yourself only 1% more each day. But not only that, I'm also going to show you a significant difference between pushing yourself 1% harder and pushing yourself just a tiny bit more than that. If you're not familiar with the graph for getting 1% better, here it is. By getting 1% better every day, you are actually getting 3,778% better, or 37.78 times better after 1 year. And this is because of the compound effect. But the compound effect also works the other way around. If you get 1% worse every day, you're actually getting around 33 times worse after 1 year. This is a good general understanding of bettering yourself, but let's dive deeper. Let's say you're already on the good side of the graph. What is then the difference between bettering yourself 1% versus 1.1% or 0.9%? Let's take a look at 0.9% first. By bettering yourself 0.9%, you're getting around 25 times better after 1 year, which is actually amazing. But remember that 1% better equals 37 times better, which is a huge difference. Now let's look at 1.1%. By bettering yourself 1.1% every day, you're eventually going to get 51 times better after 1 year, which is insane. But don't get caught up with the numbers. Nobody knows if you're actually getting better by 1% or 1.1%. The insight you should take from this is the difference between bettering yourself by 1% and bettering yourself by just a tiny bit more. Just by pushing yourself a tiny bit more and building the habit of pushing yourself a tiny bit more with compound effects will lead to an unbelievable difference after 1 year. Of course, you also need to be aware of your limits physically and psychologically, which is going to determine when you're going to get sick and or burn out. Limit is a really interesting topic in and of itself, and I'm probably going to talk about it in future videos. But generally, most people are so far away from pushing themselves hard enough. Heck, I would even advise you to push yourself so hard in the beginning that you get sick and burn out at least once. Then you actually know where your limits are. And for next time, you can pace yourself and adjust how hard you're pushing yourself. In addition, your threshold for getting burnt out is probably higher now because you have gotten stronger after your first burnout. Combine that with reflecting on your first burnout, how you could have done things differently and better, and you are going to be moving at a much faster speed than most people. Knowing this and knowing the difference, are you really not going to push yourself just a tiny bit more?
This is why people give up too early. If you ever felt like your efforts aren't paying off, you're not alone. I'll make it perfectly clear through explaining this graph, and later in this short video, I'll give you an analogy that will make you never give up too soon again. People have the wrong expectations of the relationships between their actions and their results. They think that just by taking actions, their results will follow at the same rate. But that's not how it works. As time passes and no results are coming, people get frustrated and give up. What they don't realize is that you will see little to no result in the beginning, and it's only much later on that you will start to see the fruits of your efforts. It's kind of like boiling water. If we imagine boiling water as the result we want and the heating process as our actions, then you won't see any results until the water hits 100 degrees or 212 degrees Fahrenheit for my American viewers out there. It doesn't matter if it's 30 degrees or 90 degrees. If you stop before reaching the tipping point, you won't see any result. It's the same with results from your actions. You might take actions for weeks and months, seeing little to no progress, but in reality, you are heating up the water. And once you reach 100 degrees, that's when you see exponential results. Here's the hard part. If we zoom in on our day-to-day lives, the actions we take seems like they're not changing anything. They seem insignificant and the results are invisible. Eating a salad today won't change you. Just like eating a donut today is not going to harm you, but it will absolutely affect you over the longer term. These actions will be the start of you going either exponentially upwards or exponentially downwards. In conclusion, understand that your results will come much later on, and when they do, they will come exponentially. Understand that your actions today might seem insignificant, but behind the scenes, you are heating up the water, and every degree matters. Remember, most people give up right before they reach the tipping point. Don't be one of them.
Imagine getting more work done in less time and use the extra time you get on other things that are important to you. That is totally possible and very likely with the concepts I'm going to share with you today. I will divide this video into two parts. First, identifying what tasks you should focus on, and second, how you should work on those tasks. To identify what task you should focus on, we're going to apply the Pareto principle. You probably heard of it, but if you haven't, the principle states that 80% of your output comes from 20% of your input. And this applies to basically everything. Now, don't get too caught up with the exact numbers, but just understand that in almost everything you do, most of your results come from a small amount of your effort. You can ask yourself the following questions. What is the 20% of your work that produces 80% of your results? You can also apply it in the following way. What is the 20% of your work that causes 80% of your distractions? I like to ask the question a bit differently. I like to ask, what is the one thing from my work that produces most of my results? By asking these questions, you can identify what task you should focus on that will yield you the most output with the least input. For my work, I will identify 1 to 3 tasks each day using these questions. And once I complete them, I will be satisfied because I know that those are the most productive tasks I could possibly work on. Everything else will either be a distraction or a bonus. Let's move on to how to work on the task. For this part, I have 2 concepts. And the first is to remove all distractions, even the tiniest things. What do you need to get your task done? A computer, keyboard, and a mouse? Remove everything else. No phones. If you're distracted by websites, block them or turn off your internet. If you have notifications on your computer, turn them off. If you're distracted by sound, get a noise cancelling headset. Remove all possible distractions such that there is nothing that will sway you away from your work. Be relentless about this. Your mind will try to trick you into saying that it is okay to have your phone close. No, it is not okay. The best scientists and billions of dollars have been invested into the phone to get you to use it and keep you there. Don't be arrogant and think that you can win that game. Put your phone away and don't even play that game. The last concept is batching. Batching is about grouping similar tasks together and completing them in one go. I was surprised about how much this boosted my productivity. The reason this is so effective is because every task switch involves a refocus time, and every task also involves momentum. What I mean by this is that every time you switch a task, you will lose some time by ending that task, and you will also lose the time it takes to start up a new task. Not only are there physical factors that make you lose time, but also mentally. Your mind needs time to refocus, and your mind also gets into a momentum after a certain time of doing one thing. So when you switch, you kill the momentum. By bundling similar tasks together, you minimize the time lost by switching tasks and maximize the time saved by taking advantage of the momentum that you built up. To give you an example of this, when I started making YouTube videos, I would come up with one idea, write a script for it, do a voiceover, edit, and post. After realizing I could batch the tasks together, I started coming up with multiple ideas in one go. Then I would write the script for all of the ideas in one session. In the next section, I would do a voiceover for all of them. And lastly, I would edit all of them in one go. Because of this, I was able to make a lot more videos in a much shorter time. By minimizing the task switch and maximizing the momentum, my productivity in making YouTube videos increased massively.
When people try to improve their focus, they often try to just focus harder. They clench their fists, grit their teeth, and try to force themselves to concentrate harder. While this method isn't necessarily bad, it's far from effective and optimal. There is a way to achieve laser focus more effortlessly, a way that doesn't feel like such an uphill battle. In this video, I'll share a method everyone can use to improve their focus more effortlessly. There will be valuable insights throughout the video that might fit your exact situation, so make sure to watch all the way through. The first thing we need to do is to shift the way we look at focus. A much better way is to flip it and look at the other side of the equation. To focus is to not be distracted. To be distracted is to not be focused. So we only need to focus on the distraction part of this equation, and the focus part is going to take care of itself. What happens in practice is, as distractions goes down, focus is naturally going to go up. The only reason you're not laser focused is because you have other options in the moment that is going to be more stimulating and exciting for your brain. This possibility is going to create cravings from your brain to do the activity instead of being laser focused. So what you want to do is remove all distractions and the possibilities of engaging in those distractions. And you want to do this until your work becomes the most fun and stimulating activity for your brain. Achieving laser focus at this point is going to become effortless because it's literally nothing else to do. Because doing the work and being laser focused is the most fun thing you can do. So you're naturally just going to do it. So to sum it up in one sentence, remove all distractions such that being laser focused on your work is the most fun and exciting thing you can do for that period of time. Let's take a look at how we can implement this in practice. The first step is to identify your distractions. This is part of what I call level 1. We're going to come back to level 2 later. You probably already have an idea of what your distractions are, but it's important to have them written down clearly. So reflect on this past week or month and write down exactly what you have been distracted by. And if you really don't know or remember what you've been distracted by, start tracking immediately and do this for at least one whole week. After doing this, you're going to have real data on what your distractions are. The next step is to prioritize them. Look at them one at a time and figure out how you can either A, remove them completely, or B, set up frictions through, for example, rules, checklists, or systems such that you minimize the likelihood for you to engage in the distractions. Let's look at a specific case with a common distraction like the phone and social media. You can either A, remove your phone and social media apps, or B, set up frictions. I've went with the latter. And this is how I'm currently doing it. There is a functionality on iPhone called downtime, which blocks all the apps you want for a period of time. I've set it up such that it automatically turns on during my working hours. In combination with this, I also turn on the do not distract mode or airplane mode. In addition to this, I also created automations in the shortcut app such that I'm forced to write my intention when I click on an app and also write down how long I'm intending to use that app for. On top of all of this, I also put my phone in a drawer and close it. Now you might think that it sounds like a lot of work, but it's only a bit of work in the beginning. Everything is automated after that. So the only thing I'm really doing in practice is to put my phone in the drawer. Now you might also think, wouldn't it be easier to just delete social media? Most likely. And if you can do it, it's probably a wise choice. I just enjoy the benefits of social media and I don't mind spending time setting up systems that minimize the downsides. I've also created similar systems on my computer. No notification during my working hours, and I set up frictions for the websites I know I'm usually distracted by. There is an extension called With Intention that forces you to write your intention before getting access to the website. I've applied this extension to all the websites I know I'm usually distracted by. I also have an extension for YouTube that blocks the home feed, the recommendation feed, and the shorts. And I do similar things to other websites that distracts me as well. This has significantly increased my focus, especially in cases where I need to go to a website to research something, but get distracted by other things from that website. There will still be times where I accidentally get distracted, but the possibility and frequency of that is much, much lower now. The last thing I want to touch upon is catching thoughts, feelings, and compulsions. On one hand, it's removing distractions. On the other hand, it's catching your thoughts and compulsions. This is what I like to look at as level 2. There's nothing you can do about random thoughts that pop into your head while you try to focus. But whether you engage in those thoughts or not is 100% in your control. You probably develop bad habits in engaging in those thoughts, but the first step is just to become aware of it. As you become more aware of it, the next step is to fight it. If you don't fight it with all your might, you're going to get sucked into it and you're going to feed it. And it's going to become bigger and bigger. And suddenly you've been distracted for 20 minutes. You have to assert discipline in the moment. If you don't give in and feed into the thought, it is slowly going to fade away. And the more you do this, the stronger you're going to get and the easier it's going to feel like. And eventually, you're going to build the habit of not giving in to your thoughts and compulsions while you work. Work on removing distractions and work on catching your thoughts and compulsions, and you will have a dangerous combo to achieve laser focus. You perfectly plan your day, maybe even your whole week. You know what you need to do and when you need to do it. But when the time comes, you suddenly feel a wall of resistance, like an invisible force is holding you back. As a normal human being, you choose the path of least resistance and rationalize to yourself that you can do it later. In other words, you procrastinate. In this video, I'll talk about where this resistance comes from and how to overcome procrastination for good. The first thing that you need to be aware of is that procrastination and this resistance that you're feeling is an emotional issue. And this emotional issue is usually a fear of something. Personally, my fears were often related to fear of judgment from other people and fear related to perfectionism. It took me a long time to realize that those two fears were the main reasons for my procrastination. But after becoming aware of it, it became a lot easier to not procrastinate. Fears related to judgment from other people and perfectionism is probably common fears that a lot of other people feel too. But if you want to find your exact fears, I would definitely recommend to journal. When you're procrastinating, pull up the note app on your phone or computer, or even a physical clean sheet, and start writing down exactly what you're thinking and feeling in the moment. If you're not journaling, it's like trying to solve complicated math problems in your head instead of doing it on a sheet. Trying to do it all in your head is going to take a lot more focus. It's going to take longer, and you might not even solve the problem. And when you're procrastinating, instead of it being complicated math problems, it's complicated life problems. That is why you want to journal when you procrastinate. Give it a try, and I'm confident that you're going to be pleasantly surprised by how clear your thinking is going to get after it. The next thing I'm going to talk about is something I call the compass, and I'm going to preface it with some of Chris Williamson's tweets lately. The magic you're looking for is still in the work you're avoiding. You still need to do the thing. Did the thing. Do the thing on a Saturday. This is the essence of what I like to call the compass. The task that you're trying to avoid the most is the exact task that you should be doing right now. Out of all the tasks on your task list, the task that you're trying to avoid the most is the exact task that will bring you the furthest ahead. And I also realized that this is the game productive people are playing. Who is the fastest at starting to do the thing they don't want to do? Speed of implementation. That is the name of the game. Next up, I'm gonna walk you through how this can look like in practice. Let's say you have planned what you needed to do and when you needed to do it. And when the time comes for you to do it, you start to feel this resistance. The first step is to become aware of it. And if you're new, I would definitely recommend you to start journaling. Next up is to have an experimental viewpoint. Maybe you just heard about this concept, or maybe you don't believe it, or maybe you believe it theoretically, but you haven't experienced it yet, so you don't know how it feels emotionally. Just think for yourself that you're going to test this concept out. So write down what you're thinking and feeling when you're procrastinating, when you feel the resistance. Then write down that you're going to test this concept, that you're going to do the task that give you the most resistance. And also write down that you're going to come back to this journal afterwards to reflect on how it went. After you manage to do this, it's going to feel amazing. But what's more important is that you built up a piece of evidence for yourself. I touched upon this earlier, but understanding this theoretically is not enough. You have to experience it and give your body and mind emotional evidence that it's better to do the work you're trying to avoid than to procrastinate. And as you build more evidence for yourself, this is going to work, the faster you're going to realize when you procrastinate, and the faster you're going to start doing the thing you don't want to do the most. Another tip I want to give for this process is that when I feel this resistance building up, I don't fight it or become angry. I become aware of it, I might journal about it, I accept it, and then I start doing the work.
You are not disciplined enough. That's what the message often feels like in the self-development space sometimes. Although building discipline is great, in my opinion, it is overrated. There are better ways to go about it. In this video, I will talk about why discipline is not as important as it might seem, another concept one can use instead, and lastly, using timing to get the best out of your discipline use throughout your day. Let's first define motivation and discipline. Motivation is doing what you need to do when you feel like it. Discipline is doing what you need to do whether you feel like it or not. Motivation is volatile. It goes up and down, and you're only able to do what you need to do when you feel like it. Discipline is more stable. You're able to do more of what you need to do because you can also do it when you don't feel like it. When you don't have motivation, you can use discipline. And when you have motivation, well, you don't even need to use discipline. But most people overlook that discipline also has its limits. How long can you keep doing something when you don't feel like it? What if everything in your life just feels like an uphill battle every day for weeks and months? Sure, discipline can get you far, definitely further than motivation. But at some point, you're going to hit a limit and give up. That's why it is better to also use the concept I'm going to talk about next. In Atomic Habits, James talks about how research suggests that most disciplined people actually don't have a lot more discipline than others. The reason it seems that they are so much more disciplined is because of their environment relatively to the environment of the not so disciplined person. There has been research on how putting more water cans in a room make people drink more, and how grocery stores putting candy at the checkout counter nudge people to buy more candy. And you have probably experienced it yourself with your phone. If you're working and the phone is close, you're just much more likely to check it. But if it is in another room, you're likely to check it a lot less. What environment design essentially does is prolonging the motivation period and shortening the period when you don't feel like it. As a consequence of this, you don't need to use discipline as often. And the times when you need to use discipline, you only need to use a smaller amount. As a result, it's going to take a lot longer before you hit your discipline limit. Lastly, I'm going to leave you with a few questions you can ask yourself to effectively implement environmental design. How can I change my environment such that I can use less discipline without negatively affecting my output? How can I change my environment such that I use as little discipline as possible without negatively affecting my output? How can I change my environment such that I don't need to use discipline at all without negatively affecting my output?
The concept of discipline can often feel vague, and vagueness is a clear road to procrastination. Do you have a clear definition of discipline? Even if you do, the concept of discipline can still feel big and overwhelming. In this video, I'll dive deeper into defining exactly what discipline is, why habits are not enough, and the different types of discipline, something I haven't seen anyone talk about. I'll also show you how to practice and continually improve your discipline for each types of discipline, ultimately leading you to living the life you want. I define discipline as doing what you know you should do when you don't feel like it. This means that motivation is not part of this definition, as motivation involves doing what you know you should do when you feel like it. Motivation will therefore not be part of this video, and neither will habits, as habits are actions you do on autopilot without requiring discipline. However, I will discuss how discipline plays into forming and maintaining habits. Mike Tyson also has an interesting definition of discipline, doing what you hate to do like you love it. This is basically an extreme angle of the definition we just presented, but I like to look at the definition as a scale. Discipline is doing what you know you should do when you don't feel like it, and you can do it as you hate it or as you love it. Imagine doing it as you love it on the far right of the scale and doing it as you hate it on the far left. The most important thing is to just do it, whether you do it as you love it or hate it. However, it does make sense to try to be as far right on the scale as possible, as doing it like you love it will likely be more efficient and sustainable. While focusing on habits allows you to not need discipline, you still need discipline to build a habit in the first place. You also need discipline to maintain a habit. It's inevitable that we will fall out of a habit. There's a saying that missing a habit once is a mistake, but missing it twice is the start of a new habit. Correcting a missed habit requires discipline. You won't miss a habit once and never miss it again. You'll continue to miss it here and there, and snapping yourself back and maintaining your habit requires discipline. Self-discipline is crucial and a fundamental characteristic for anyone who wants to be the best version of themselves and create the life they want. I like to divide discipline into different types, depending on the enemy I'm facing. I have discipline against big fears in the moment, discipline against doing the important task you know you should do, discipline against small distractions, or discipline when I'm tired later in the day. The reason I have divided discipline into these types is because of the similar feelings that arise for these situations and how it feels to assert discipline in each case. For example, big fears in the moment feels more like a life or death situation. These could be situations like presenting in front of a big crowd, discussing something important with your boss, or talking to a girl in the street. On the other hand, discipline against doing the important task you know you should do doesn't feel like life or death at all. It's a different feeling, but I like how Brian Tracy refers to it as eating the frog. This is such an interesting way to look at it, because it really feels like that. Although the solutions to these situations might be similar, and we're going to look at the solutions soon, definitely helps me to have categorized them and view them as different enemies. I've categorized my discipline into the situations that often arise for me, but you can divide it into as many situations and feelings as you like. I suggest starting with the 3 situations you face most often, and if you want to divide into more after that, feel free to do so. For the solutions, I'll share how I combat one of my discipline enemies. Since discipline is very personal, consider my solutions as inspirations to develop your own strategies. For discipline against big fears in the moment, I have a few things. I'll list them out first and explain them after. Go or move ownership. Future me, future benefits, past victories, disgusting me, shift focus to them, and shift focus to experimentation. My plan A is to think, go or move. I just want to think of moving my body, nothing else. In moments of big fear, your mind wants to think of everything that can go wrong. And if you allow it to go down that route, it will paralyze you. This plan often works, but if it doesn't, I'll switch to plan B. Plan B involves different mindset shifts. First one is ownership, where I remind myself that no one is coming to save me. I'm solely and fully responsible for my life. I need to take responsibility to not only take opportunities that come to me, but to create them myself. After this mindset shift, I will go back to plan A and just start moving. This shift often removes the mental block that prevented me from moving during plan A. If the ownership mindset doesn't work, I'll run through other mindset shifts. For example, I will think about what future me would do through the question, if I was 5% more like the person I wanted to be, what would I do right now? Then I'll try to go back to plan A and just move. I'll run through all the different mindset shifts on my list until I'm able to just move. The reason I have all these different types of mindset shifts is that different ones click at different times. Some may work one time, but not another time. Some may work for a while, but then stop working. Having these various mindsets that I go through increases the likelihood that I will be able to act despite my big fear in the moment. This is how I continuously practice my self-discipline when these situations arise. In fact, these are the only times you can practice self-discipline. By definition, only when you don't feel like it can you practice self-discipline. Be grateful when these situations arise, because it's the only time you can practice and strengthen your self-discipline. The last thing I want to touch upon is tracking discipline. A lot of people expect to be super disciplined all the time, to be able to do everything without ever missing anything. While this ambition is good, it is not realistic and can be detrimental. This expectation often leads you to becoming emotional and feeling a big loss of confidence when you miss a day, because you are inevitably going to miss a day. A much better way to approach this is by looking at your discipline over a longer period of time. Instead of just looking at it day by day, look at it over a period of a week or a month. Are you, on average, becoming more disciplined? This approach is better because even if you have a bad day, you can still be on the right track over the longer term. This perspective makes it easier to avoid being too hard on yourself and, worst case, giving up. This is why tracking the things you want to improve is so important. It helps you maintain a long-term view and focus on your average progress. Also, the act of tracking itself will make you more disciplined and motivated through increased awareness and feedback. I use my own personal tracker called the Ultimate Life Tracker, which you can check out in the link down below. But you can also use whatever tracker you like. The most important thing is to just track. To wrap things up, discipline is about consistent progress, not perfection. By understanding and practicing discipline in various areas of your life and tracking your progress over time, you will improve and achieve your goals. Start small, stay consistent, and you'll see significant improvements. We live in a world where things are evolving at an increasingly rapid speed, including distractions. That means that there has never been more important to get good at managing your time. I've spent countless hours on experimenting with different approaches, and in this video, I'm going to share with you how I effectively plan my month, week, and day. If you're new here, this is Outperform, and in this channel, we break down concepts within self-development through unique visuals and insights grounded in real-world experience. If you like this video, make sure to hit the subscribe button. When it comes to my system, I have my monthly goals, weekly goals, and daily goals all in one page in Notion. The reason I have it set up this way is because I'm able to have a quick glance at my monthly goals and weekly goals if I want to. In addition, I'm able to easily see the connection between my daily goals, weekly goals, and monthly goals. And if there isn't a connection, I'm able to easily spot it and adjust it quickly. My monthly goal is also connected to my long-term goal. That means that the daily goals that I set here is actually connected all the way through to my long-term goal. And if you want to see my video on how to make long-term goals, I will link the video here. Now, for my monthly goal, I only want to have 1 to 3 main goals that I'm going to focus on. Initially, I'm probably going to write down more than 3 things, but eventually I'm going to prioritize and choose. To help me with this, I have 2 questions that is always present in this view. And those questions are, what is the 1 to 3 most important things that I'm blessed to do this month? My second question is, what is the one thing I can focus on this month such that by doing it, everything else will be easier or unnecessary? I will do the same exercise for my weekly and daily view. In my daily view, I also have another part. In this part, I write down all the other things that I want to do for the day. Here, I'm allowed to write as many things as I want. But this part is clearly separated from the first part. This is to emphasize that I'm not allowed to do the second part until I'm finished with the first part. So you can look at the second part almost as a bonus task list. After identifying the most important tasks, prioritizing and choosing, now is the time to put everything in the calendar. Whether you use Google Calendar, Outlook, or any other calendar is really not that important. The most important thing here is that you just have a calendar to use. A calendar will make you time block your most important tasks, and it will make you think about how you should structure your week and how you should place your tasks optimally for your goals, needs, and wants. An advice for this process is to give yourself a buffer and be flexible. This is because most people underestimate how much time they actually need for certain tasks, especially in the beginning. And if they have filled out their whole week with minimal buffers, just a small error in their forecasting ability might fuck up their whole week. Now, let's talk about the phase later in the process where you're actually taking action and completing the task that you have set out to do. Sometimes in these phases, it's easy to fall into a negative perspective and think, I need to do this, I need to do that. Under these circumstances, you need to first realize that you've fallen into a negative perspective. Then you need to shift your perspective. Everything that you've wrote down in your monthly view, your weekly view, and your daily view, everything that you've put in your calendar, those are things that you've chosen to do. Those are things that you want to do. You don't actually need to do any of those things. To help me prevent myself from falling into these negative perspectives, you might have noticed how I phrased the questions I asked myself earlier. The first one was, what is the 1 to 3 most important things that I'm blessed to do? It is not I need to do. Now, you don't need to use the word blessed like I do. You can also just use the word I want to or I choose to. The most important thing here is that you don't use the word need. I also call this whole page in Notion want to-do list, not just to-do list. All of this to prevent me from falling into the negative perspective.
We have all felt completely overwhelmed by keeping up with different routines, keeping up with work tasks, maintaining our gym schedule, and so much more. This common feeling can stop us all in our tracks. In this video, I will talk about a technique that top performers like David Goggins have used to overcome this challenge. And in the end of the video, I will give a personal example of how I successfully implemented the technique myself. Before we dive in, let us first take a look at the concept of flow state. Flow state was popularized by psychologist Mihai Csikszentmihalyi and is a state where you're fully immersed and focused on what you're doing. In short, if the challenge of what you're doing is too high, you will get anxious. And if the challenge is too low, you will become bored. It has to be in the sweet spot between challenge and your skill level for you to come in a flow state. In light of the challenge of feeling overwhelmed, I modify this graph by adding in mental state, doing what you need to do, and the feeling of overwhelm. Let's take an example of where your average mental state is here and the challenge of going to the gym is here. In this case, you will be able to do your gym session with ease. But when you're feeling overwhelmed, when you're tired, your mental state is all the way down here. But the challenge still remains at the same point. This means that the challenge is now too difficult for you in relation to your mental state, and you will feel overwhelmed. Can you guess what we need to do? We need to lower the challenge. Instead of thinking that you're going to do a 90-minute hard workout, think that you only need to walk to the gym. If even that is too hard, think that you only need to take on your gym clothes. Decrease the challenge until the point where you're able to do it, until you reach the sweet spot. Let's say that you were able to successfully apply this and get yourself to the gym. What now? Well, now your mental state have probably increased. So walking home would be too easy of a challenge. So you end up going to the gym and do your session anyways. In other words, you increase the challenge to match your increased mental state. This is just an example of going to the gym. Do you see how you can manipulate your thinking and challenge based on your mental state such that you're able to do what you need to do in the end anyways? A lot of top performers use this technique, and one of them is David Goggins. In his interviews, he talks about his morning routine where he will run for about 1 to 2 hours every single day, even though he hates running. He also talks about his mindset before going for his runs and how he will not think about the full length of the run and how brutal it is going to be. Because if he does, his mind will get overwhelmed. He will try to just think about taking on his running clothes and start running, one step at a time. This is very similar to my personal experience. When I was younger, I used to do a lot of run tests. Me and a couple of other guys were usually the ones in the lead and the ones that pushed ourselves the hardest. And every time we ran, about 1/3 into the run, I felt totally dead. It felt impossible to keep up with the pace that we had all the way until the end. But I ignored the thought. I just focused on moving one leg at a time, breathing in one breath and breathing out another breath. And just like that, I managed to keep up with the pace and even pick up the speed in the last third of the run. This happened again and again on every running test. I felt dead the first third. I felt it would be impossible to keep up the pace. I kept up the pace anyways and ran faster in the end. And every time I was fascinated about how my mind wanted to take me to this place of overwhelm and how I was able to overcome it. So, to summarize, in the cases where you feel overwhelmed, decrease the challenge such that it matches your mental state and you're able to do it. Watch how your mental state starts to shift and increase the challenge again, while your mind tried to trick you into not doing what you needed to do. With this technique, you tricked your mind into doing what you needed to do anyways.
Don't make your last training session go to waste. Don't make your last class, your last exam, your last meeting, project, and even last social interaction. Don't make none of them go to waste. In this video, I'm going to talk about the secret superpower of self-reflection. In the end of the video, I will talk about a subtle thing about self-reflection that most people are not aware of. So make sure to watch until then. If you don't self-reflect, you're wasting your training and past experiences. You've probably seen examples of guys that train all the time, but does not seem to get better. Or examples of the guy that goes to every class, does all his homework, but still get average results. For the time and effort that they put in, it feels like they should have gotten a lot better. Although every case is contextual, from my experiences with myself and from what I've seen from others, is that they don't take time to self-reflect. The first benefit of self-reflection is that it makes you aware and or reminds you of the good and bad things you did. In a training session, there are going to be certain good things that you do and certain bad things that you do.
If you don't self-reflect after this session, you're risking not becoming aware of these things. Compare that to another person that self-reflects. By becoming aware of the things that he does well, he can start thinking about how he can take advantage of that. And by becoming aware of the things that he does poorly, he can start thinking about how he can do less of that or overcome that. Who do you think are going to progress faster? And imagine if you self-reflect consistently, you will start to see patterns. You will see what you're consistently doing well and what you're consistently struggling with. By having this insight, you can start prioritizing what to focus on. What thing should you focus on that would yield you the most result with the least effort? What is the 80-20 that you should focus on? What is the bottleneck of your game? The first step to progressing in anything is just to show up, do the training, do the thing. But after you master that, that is when you have to start thinking about training smarter. And that is where self-reflection comes in. My Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu coach said something to me that really reinforced this idea. He said that showing up to training is good, but time outside training, when you're just thinking, that's where you're really progressing. Thinking about what you did well and how you could have done it better. Thinking about the bad things that you did, how you could have avoided it, or how you can come up with a plan to overcome it. And just thinking in general how you're going to get better. Coming into the next session with that insight, that is where real progress happens. You can use self-reflection in anything, not just sports. You can use it for your exams, your classes, your projects, your meetings, even your social interactions. For the things that I really want to get better in, I will self-reflect all the time, both on a micro level after each session and a macro level after each week, month, and year.
You're always pushing yourself, constantly improving, but something feels off. An underlying feeling of anxiousness, and you can't seem to enjoy simple moments throughout the day. In this video, I will talk about a common trap of constantly wanting to improve yourself and how you can avoid it. Wanting to improve is great. It is what's driving you to push yourself, doing what you need to do and become better. But it also creates a lot of anxiety. You're always looking forward, always wanting something. When I achieve this, then I'll be happy. You're basically living in the future. The solution is simple, but so easy to overlook and undervalue. And the solution is gratitude, especially gratitude towards your own journey. Gratitude forces you to shift your perspective to what you've already done. Most people undervalue what they have already achieved and gone through. You have overcome so much until now, all the ups and downs, and you're still here. And you're probably still continuing on this journey of self-improvement, still continuing to find out more about yourself and the world, still trying. You are amazing already, and you are on the journey of becoming more amazing. While self-improvement makes you look forward and wanting something, gratitude makes you present and shifts your energy to gratefulness and receiving. A simple routine you can begin with is just to set aside a few minutes each morning to be grateful. Be grateful and show appreciation towards your journey. Think about all the great things that you have already achieved. Think about all the challenges that you have overcome. Think about how you're still here, still improving, becoming a better person. Do this and watch how your energy starts to shift. Do this every day for a few days and watch how your anxiety starts to get replaced with a more enjoyable feeling of gratitude and even a feeling of confidence going forward.
Have you ever felt like life dealt you a bad hand? How unfair it is that other people got dealt better hands. Especially in today's world, where social media floods us with images of perfection and makes it all so easy for us to believe that we're playing a losing game. But what if I told you that there are other games that you can play? Games that gives unfair advantages to your specific cards and disadvantages to all the other cards. In this video, we're going to talk about accepting the cards you've been dealt and and why it is crucial, how to play the cards you've been dealt in the best possible way, and lastly, even create your own games where your hands are the best. Focus on what you can control and don't waste energy on the things you cannot. You've already been given the hands you've been given. There is nothing you can do about it. And there is nothing you can do about what hands other people have been dealt. No matter how unfair you think it is not going to change. Anger and jealousy is not only wasted energy, but it's also going to blur your vision. You might actually have better hands than you think, but you don't realize this because you're so distracted and focused on what other people have. And this is going to prevent you from clearly seeing the hands you actually got in front of you. A lot of people also play other people's games, but these are games that they're never going to win because they're always going to be someone smarter than you, more good looking than you, more athletic and more popular. These are games that you're never going to win. After fully accepting the cards you've been dealt, you will start to have a clear vision. You can finally begin to look at your hands objectively. You might realize that the big disadvantages you thought you had were significantly over-exaggerated by the blurred vision you had, and that you also had a lot more advantages than you think you had. You begin to get a better understanding of your cards, what its strengths are and what its weaknesses are. And when an opportunity arises for you to take advantage of your strength, you don't hesitate, as opposed to before, where you were so distracted and focused on other people that you didn't even see the opportunity that was right in front of you. If you were born less wealthy, you will have challenges that a wealthy person does not get to have. Why are you envious? Why do you even waste a second being jealous? By being less wealthy, you have the privilege of working yourself up to wealth. By being less wealthy, you have the privilege of being more grateful for your wealth. Focus on the cards you've been dealt instead of wishing you had other cards. And the world is quickly going to become a more fun, enjoyable, and adventurous ride. Now let's move on to choosing your own games. You don't actually need to play the games created by the social norms, especially if they're set up in a way where you're only at a disadvantage. Find other games that favors the cards you've been dealt with, even if those games might be unconventional or considered weird by societal standards. You might even create your own games that totally favor your hands. The fact that you got dealt your specific cards might actually be a true blessing, because there is no one else in the world that got the cards you got. No one in the world is better at being you than you. No one is better than understanding yourself and bettering yourself than you. There is no competition. By accepting your cards, creating and playing games that give your hands unfair advantages, you will differentiate yourself from the rest of the world and create a game where no one can beat you.
Have you ever felt paralyzed by the need for everything you do to be perfect? Today we're going to explore the double-edged sword of perfectionism and how it might be holding you back more than you realize. Make sure to watch on to the end, because I'm going to share a personal breakthrough I had with this and how this massively improved my execution, productivity, and creativity. You can look at perfectionism as a double-edged sword. On one side, it helps you in having high standards, great attention to detail, and a relentless pursuit of excellence. But on the other side, it can actually kill your execution, productivity, and creativity. It is the side of perfectionism that prevents us from taking the first step. Whether that is putting out your first YouTube video, writing, or even talking to someone, or striking up a conversation. You're not putting out your first YouTube video because you have too high standards. You're not writing anything because you know that it will take a lot of time to write something good enough, so you don't bother starting. You're not striking up that conversation because you think that not knowing what to say or what you're about to say is not good enough. Perfectionism creates hesitation, self-doubt, and ultimately inaction. What your perfectionism is preventing you from seeing is that imperfect action beats perfect inaction. I'm going to repeat that again. Imperfect action beats perfect inaction. Who do you think is going to create a better video? The beginner that created 10 imperfect videos, iterated and got better along the way? Or a beginner that waited, hesitated, speculated, and only made one video in the same time span? There's actually been a great test related to this exact topic. A professor divided his university photography class in two groups. The first group would be in the quantity group and graded solely on the amount of work they produced. 100 photos will rate an A, 90 a B, 80 a C, and so on. The second group will be graded only on the quality of their work. They will only need to produce one photo, but to get an A, it had to be almost perfect. At the end of the semester, the professor found that all the best photos were produced by the quantity group. During the semester, the quantity group was busy taking photos, experimenting, and learning from their mistakes, while the quality group was busy speculating. In the end, the quality group was left with just a lot of unverified theories and one mediocre photo. Now let's move on to a practical way to solve this. I use a framework that is called FBR. I got this from Ali Abdal, and he got it from a podcast Tim Ferriss had with Safi Bahcall. And Safi Bahcall is a physicist, technologist, business executive, and most relevant here, a successful author. In the podcast, they also talked about how his framework, FBR, was very similar to Robert Rodriguez's process, who is a filmmaker, screenwriter, producer, cinematographer, editor, and musician. And he is known as the Wizard of Hollywood. So FBR stands for fast, bad, and raw. When you're in the beginning phases of making something, for example, writing or making a video, you actually want to get started as fast as possible. You actually just want to do it fast, bad, and raw. And this is where the acronym comes in. It is so simple, but yet so powerful. By just thinking of FBR, you completely destroy the bad sides of perfectionism, and it makes it so easy for you to just start. Because your goal is to just do it bad and wrong. So perfectionism is not going to hold you back, and it's not going to prevent you from just starting. And if you end up making something good, that's actually just a great bonus. The reason you also want to do it fast is because of momentum and creativity. In the podcast with Tim and Safi, they talk about how creativity comes from momentum. If you, for example, are writing, you want to allow your creativity to flow and just write down what comes to mind. If you're fixated on writing your words correctly or the sentence correctly, you stop and go back. You're essentially killing this momentum and ultimately your creativity. This is just your perfectionism coming through again. Don't let it distract you. Just do it fast, bad, and raw, and keep going. There's always time to edit later. That is the time where you allow your perfectionism to come through. And it's going to be a lot better because you're going to do it in a future session and you can look back at it with fresh eyes. But now is the time for action and creativity. Act first, and then the inspiration will come. And when the inspiration comes, allow the creativity to flow through you by keeping up the momentum. Now let's move on to a personal example I had with this. In the beginning of my YouTube journey, I often had days where I was going to create a storyboard for a video, but I procrastinated. I didn't know what I was going to create, and I had these high standards of how good my storyboard needed to be, and all these thoughts paralyzed me. It felt like just a heavy lift to get started. So more often than not, I just ended up pushing it off and procrastinating. But eventually, I just had to sit down and do it. And almost every time when I'm done, I look back at the storyboards that I created. I'm thinking, how the heck did I create all these storyboards? Where did it all come from? When I'm creating these storyboards, it honestly feels like creativity just flows through me. And remember, I had no idea what I was going to create before I sat down and did it. It's like I'm drawing it from a source that can't be accessed until I just start. Almost like a source that is not from me, but through me. I know it might sound kind of woo-woo, but it all comes back to what I said earlier. Act first, and then the inspiration will come. We all know someone that had a lot of past successes and wins and took a lot of actions. But despite their successes and the clear evidence of their capabilities, they doubted themselves. No matter how good they were and how good others told them they were still crippled by self-doubt, especially when it mattered the most. Maybe you were the person yourself. This is a common phenomenon that people go through, and it's one of the biggest dream killer of them all, and that is self-doubt. In this video, I'll dive deeper into what self-doubt really is and how to overcome it. There'll be insights all throughout the video, so make sure to watch all the way through. What exactly is self-doubt? According to Lewis House, self-doubt is usually made up by 3 fears: fear of failure, fear of success, and fear of judgment from other people. I've already made a video about fear of failure, so feel free to check it out here. And I'm not going to go into fear of success and fear of judgment. What I am going to talk about in this video is the types of self-doubt. So self-doubt is usually made up by these three fears. There are two common types of self-doubt that comes out of this. Self-doubt when it comes to your ability, and self-doubt when it comes to self-worth. And it's also possible to have a combination of these. Let's look at self-doubt when it comes to your ability first. This is related to your belief in your ability to do something. Some struggle with this type of self-doubt, but most people struggle with the other type, self-doubt when it comes to self-worth. Lewis likes to give an example of a senior basketball player he used to look up to. This guy was freakishly explosive and could dunk at will, but despite his talent, he didn't believe in himself. Time and time again, he failed under pressure. Did this guy doubt his ability? He probably had extreme confidence when it came to his ability. It was the second type of self-doubt that stopped him. Self-doubt when it came to self-worth. I'll tell you a similar personal example too. I used to play football, or soccer as you call it in America. I was a talented kid. I got picked out to train with the 25 best players in the country for my age. I trained with older guys, and everyone told me how talented and good I were. But it was not unusual for me to buckle under pressure. People often told me that I just needed to believe in myself because they knew I had the ability and skills. They seen me in training, and they were always a bit astonished to how I couldn't play normally during certain games. At that time, I just had no idea why I struggled with my confidence. And I saw this manifest in other areas of my life too. I often had the ability, but during situations where it mattered, I lost confidence and fumbled. Self-doubt when it comes to self-worth is really a devastating thing. So let's talk about what it really is and how to overcome it. Self-doubt in terms of self-worth is about you not believing in your own worth and deservedness as a human being. You don't believe that you deserve greatness, or even goodness for that matter. You probably have a voice in your head consistently saying that you're not enough, you're not worthy, or that you don't deserve this. For some people, the voice is louder, for others, it's quieter, but it seems to always be there in the back of your head. And if you believe what the voice says, which many of us do, you will conclude that any success you get is just temporary. As a result, you will subconsciously make things harder for you because you don't believe you deserved it in the first place. You will act like you don't deserve success, and this will lead to a self-fulfilling prophecy. So how do you overcome this? Alex Hormozi has a saying as follows: you don't become confident by shouting affirmations in the mirror, but by having a stack of undeniable proof that you are who you say you are. Outwork your self-doubt. This quote is amazing, and it's probably gonna work for a lot of people, but I think it's only gonna be effective for people with the first type of self-doubt that we discussed, which was related to ability. And it's going to be less effective for the people with the second type of self-doubt related to self-worth. We saw the example with the basketball player and my personal experience that from the outside and objectively, all the proof was there, but we still struggled with self-doubt. And I'm sure you've seen plenty of similar cases yourself. This does not target the root cause. The root cause will differ from each individual, but it's most likely related to negative experiences or trauma from your younger years. I would not be surprised if it was related to your family or parents. Now, I'm not saying that you should blame anyone, not at all. People do their best with what they know, and most parents are probably unaware of how much small things they do or don't do to their children is going to affect them later on. The fact is that how your parent instill confidence in you or how they don't instill confidence in you in your younger years is going to have a massive effect on your self-confidence later in life. Now it's your responsibility to reflect on it and heal from it if that is what is necessary for you to become the person you want to be and live the life you want to live. Identifying your traumas and healing from it requires deep work, and it's a process. I'm not going to go into the deep work in this video, but I will give you an exercise that is going to get you started. Author Dan Millman says that to build confidence in your worth is to appreciate your individual story and growth journey. Each person has a story that is completely unique and continually unfolding. We have a unique past and unique way forward. Comparing yourself to others is a profound disrespect to your own process. You're not more deserving than anyone else, but you aren't less deserving either. The first practice is therefore to show kindness and gratitude to yourself. Do this 2 times a day, every morning and every night. Write down 3 things. It could be things about yourself that you're grateful for, things you did today that you were proud of, challenges you overcame, etc. Do this consistently for a while, and I'm confident that you're going to start noticing a shift in in how you feel about your self-worth, self-doubt, and self-confidence. If you found this video valuable, chances are others just like you will too. Make YouTube suggest this video to them by liking it, commenting your thoughts down below, and sharing it with your friends. Or you can watch the next video here. Until next time.